Even for just video capture, this setup's pretty rough. Let's just focus on the application, I guess. Okay, here's our application. It is fully set up in terms of design. We looked at some accessibility features, whether you realize it or not. We looked at, getting the access keys or hotkeys working. We looked at the tab order. We looked at getting the tooltip in. And the whole thing also has a fairly good design. This even runs right now. This does run. It doesn't do anything, but it runs. And when you're testing purely a form design, and this should have been discussed in Prog 1205, but might not have been for everybody. You can test just the responsiveness of the form. Like there's certain things we did here. I should be able to tab through. I should be able to test my access keys mostly. I can check my tooltips, and I can. Well, what else can I do? Not too much. Generally, oh yeah, I can check that these are disabled. You know what? Disabled was the wrong choice for these text boxes. They should be read only because I can't even select them, and that's stupid. So let's redo that one little thing here. So I'm going to select all 5 text boxes. I'm gonna do this all at once. I'm gonna change read only to true. I'm gonna change enabled. It was false, and I set it that way. I'm gonna set that back to true. So they are enabled, but read only. And every time I compile this application, by the way, every time I run it, it does save all the time. So you don't have to click save before you run if you don't want to. I mean, you can, but there's no point. All right, so yeah, now I can select the boxes. If I hover over the boxes for a while, I should see tooltips. Displays the selected primary theme part. How come I'm only getting some of the tooltips? I think that's just Windows being fickle. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Windows. Ah, there it was. I'm just being impatient, I suppose. Let's see how I tab through. Okay, cool. That's perfect. And if I do one of my hotkeys, like Alt-G, that should bring me back to the first text box. Alt-G. Look at that. That's perfect. Alt-2 takes me to the second theme part. And then the tooltip pops up. This is actually pretty great. There are some things I haven't considered. I think in Clint's class, he's going to want us setting an icon for the application, which is a great idea. I could put a little Mario face in there. But I haven't downloaded one already. I'm not exactly prepared for it. So I'll just do it some other time. That's fine. Right now, we want to talk about event handlers. So let's do that. That means going into the code. During week 1, if you watched our week 1 lecture, if you were there, you would have seen some talk about default event handlers. And when you accidentally double click some control when you're setting up the design, for example, you end up in the C# code. And so out of nowhere, we're going to be going into the C# code. And you're not really primed for this, probably. But I am a little bit primed for this because I made this plan document. And so it's like, here's my pseudocode for the exit button. Close the form. It really is that simple. It's different from anything you've seen in Python, but coding in C# is not that bad, especially in Visual Studio. Certain keywords you need to know, but the IntelliSense makes it pretty easy. So if I take this exit button, there's a couple ways to add an event handler. I can double click it, and double clicking it, as we saw before, double clicking a control, adds an event handler. And look at this crazy file. It's got all these includes of different sorts. We don't know anything about that yet. And I guess we don't need to worry about it. But this here, this thing that I ended up in, private void button event or button exit click, object sender event RxE. This thing is the event handler. It's the lines of code that will run when button exit is clicked. The name doesn't, strictly speaking, matter. The name doesn't relate it to the control or the action. It's just an auto-generated name based on that control and action. In a lot of cases, it's the useful name. I don't fault people for using the default names, but I do like to set the names. Technically, this is a kind of function, so I like to name it with Pascal case, and I might do that. So here's my completely blank event handler for button exit click. The other way I can add an event handler, and let me add it to the reset button this time. I haven't done anything yet, but let's add it to the reset button because they're both going to be easy. Is if I click on reset, just the button, just a single click, because if I do a double click, I'm going to add another event handler. And I click on this lightning bolt icon in the properties window, you'll see it says events. And right here are all the different events that are possible to make for this. So if I wanted a behavior to happen based on where the mouse position was on this button or whatever, I could do that. Or if I wanted to make an event that fired when the button's size changed, I could do that. There's no practical reason for a lot of those things. The most common one is to click a button. And that's the reason that it is a default event handler for buttons. Anytime you click double click a button, it makes a click event handler because that's the most normal thing people do to buttons. So if I wanted to give this a nice name, I might call it, like, with a nice Pascal casing, reset click. No spaces, no underscores, nothing like that. And then if I hit enter, what I'm going to see here is it's made another event handler. And so I've got this event handler here called button exit click. This is the lines that'll run whenever I click exit. And then I got reset click, and that's the lines that'll run whenever I click reset. If I decide I don't like this name, there is a mass rename possible that works pretty well. It's really helpful for plagiarism, but we're not going to do that. So if I right click on this and go rename, it does a rename through the entire application. So if I want to call this exit click, to be consistent, I suppose, it says here, rename will update 2 references and 2 files. I click apply, and then I've renamed that event handler across multiple files. I mean, hopefully, my computer's lagging a bit. Hopefully things don't go haywire. Oh, it did go haywire. I got a crash. Oh, dang. That's not good. Well, let me close this. I don't need that now. Oh, God. Okay. We'll try. I hadn't done very much, right? There had been some saves. Oh, Visual Studio. I had primed you for this, right? I'd primed you that this version of Visual Studio is sometimes a little bit fickle.